Hello, I'm Peter Freeth, and I wanted to share something of my own story with you, and hopefully for you to get some ideas from, or maybe some inspiration from. It goes back to 1985 when I left school. I was halfway through A levels, and I was walking through the school reception one day. My physics teacher came up to me. He said, "Freeth," because we were all called by our surnames. He said, "Freeth, do you want a job?" And I said, "What, like stapling 100 brochures for first years?" And he said, "No, a real job, leave school, earn money." And I said, "Yeah, okay." Because I think, looking back, although I love learning, I think my school really knocked the love of learning out of me, to the point that I just wasn't interested in finishing A levels, wasn't interested in going to university. So I took this opportunity to join a company as an apprentice, did a 3-year apprenticeship, and therefore by education, through the apprenticeship and a day release course at college, by education I'm an electrical and electronic engineer. So I worked in that industry, telecoms and IT, for 17 years. In 1991 I started to think, well, I wonder if I could have done an A-level. I wonder if I was up to the challenge. So I enrolled in night school and did something that was kind of a non-schooly subject at the time, which was business studies, and I passed that. So I thought, well, okay, so I can do an A-level, and really just spent the next 17 years in that industry. But I think from the 1990s onwards, I started to think that A, employment isn't for me, and B, I think that the people aspect of the business is far more interesting than the technology. Technology is just, it changes every 5 minutes and it stays the same always. The concepts and the principles are the same. You just have to learn a new load of jargon to describe the same stuff, really. And so there's this huge pace of change within the industry that you have to keep up with, but at the same time, it's just the same stuff every year. Whereas I found learning about people and understanding people and how businesses operate and why do those things work the way that they do. And I think even as an engineer, back in the late 80s, I was always more interested in, well, why are you doing this? Why are you connecting computers together? How is this happening? And I was always fascinated by problem solving, and I was quite tenacious at kind of figuring out how things worked and what was really going on. So I started to think about becoming self-employed, and round about probably would have been late 99 or late 2000 or early 2001. I was on a train home from London, so I worked for a big telecoms company at the time. I was on a train on the way home from London, where I'd probably attended an utterly pointless, life-sucking meeting that served no useful purpose for anybody at all, other than to fill people's diaries and make them look like they were doing something useful. And I got a phone call off my then wife, who said that my oldest daughter had just taken her first steps. And I think that was the moment when I realised I'm going to become self-employed at some point. I actually felt resentment towards my employer for taking that moment away from me. And so I started networking and building a network around what I wanted to do. And at the time I thought, well, if I'm going to be self-employed, what am I going to do? And at the time, learning and coaching and personal development was interesting. So I thought, well, I'll do that. And I thought I'll do it for as long as I enjoy it. And if I stop enjoying it, I'll do something else. So 2002, opportunities came up for voluntary redundancy, and I took one of those. And so what that means is now in 2019, I've now been self-employed for longer than I was employed. So that's quite a nice kind of tipping point, balance point to get past. I'm kind of past the halfway mark, I suppose, in terms of my career. And then 2016, I thought, I wonder if I could have done a degree. I started to think about maybe, going back to university or doing something like Open University or a distance learning course or something like that. Something I really wanted to do. I thought about psychology, but to be honest, when I looked into psychology at a kind of foundation degree, undergraduate level, it was, in terms of my my experience in my work, I just thought that's really basic. I don't really want to go back and doing that. So I looked at courses for the professional body for HR and people development, which is the CIPD. I looked at courses with them, and they did a level 7, which is equivalent to a postgraduate master's, and with my experience I was able to do that with no prior degree or foundation degree or anything like that. So that took me 18 months, actually about 16 months I think, to do that course. Past that, my research project for that, which is into why talent programs fail, actually got me to into the position of being a finalist for their annual People Management Awards for outstanding student of the year, and the judging for that takes place in a couple of weeks' time, so that's quite exciting. And I think, looking back, a question that I've been asked a lot by corporate people is, how did you make that change? How did you change from a career in IT, telecoms, very technical, intellectual kind of job, into what you're doing now, which is around people development and coaching, and it's all soft and fuzzy? Well, it's not soft and fuzzy. It's as hard and technical and intellectual as as any IT job is. And people ask me, how did I make that change? And I think what they're really asking is how do they do it? How could they do that? Because I think there's a lot of people who want to become self-employed or start their own business or change careers, or maybe revisit something they did earlier in their lives that they kind of moved away from for various circumstances, which could be a career, it could be a hobby. And I think a lot of people want to make those kind of big changes in their lives, so it's naturally a question that people ask, how did you do that? And there's two answers to that question. There's the answer that's comforting for corporate people, and then there's another answer. So the answer that's comforting for corporate people is, well, it's not that different, and I was dealing then with networks and systems and complexity and problem solving, and it's very similar to what I'm doing now, and and I had the redundancy package, and that helped me. It's a nice comforting answer, because it makes realizing their dreams seem both possible and also unattainable. It's possible in that they can think, there's a series of nice, simple, logical steps that go from A to B, but at the same time impossible that, he had this circumstance and that, and he paid off his mortgage, and he had his voluntary redundancy payment, and he'd done all this other stuff. So it helps them to feel like it's a change that they could make, but also helps them to reinforce all the excuses that they tell themselves as to why they can't do it. So that's the comforting answer. There's the second answer, which is the truth. And the true answer to the question, how did you make that change, is, I woke up one day and felt like it. So what actually happened was there was a voluntary redundancy round of redundancy packages on offer, and I was walking down the road one day on my way to a training course that I was doing for my own interests. It was probably late May or early June 2002. Clear blue sky, about 8:30 in the morning. It was warm, and I looked up into the sky and I just thought, yeah, today's the day. And I emailed the HR person, said I'll take the package, and within probably a couple of weeks, I was out, and that was it. And I thought the redundancy package would probably last me a year, last me 6 months. I actually managed to buy a car, and it still lasted me a year, because what I hadn't taken into account was I was earning money self-employed almost straight away. And I think a lot of people have the idea that if they become self-employed, it'll take them a long time in order to grow their business, it'll take them a long time to find clients, and it doesn't. Those clients are already there waiting to work with you, but they don't know that you're available, and I think the power is in the stories that you tell. So if somebody's asking you what you do for a living, and you're saying, now at the moment I do this, but what I really want to do is, nobody cares. Nobody cares what you're in the middle of or what you want to do. It's just a simple question. What do you do? What's your job? But it's not a complicated question. So if you're saying, it's interesting because whatever, it's not. I couldn't care less. Just tell me what you do. So if somebody says to you, what do you do? And you say, I'm a fireman or a submarine captain or a mountaineer. Nobody's going to say, I don't believe you. Show me your certificate. They're going to say, really? Oh, that's interesting. How did you get into that? Or what's that all about? nobody will dispute that. And I'm not suggesting, you lie to people about what you do for a living. That's going to show up pretty quickly once they start asking you any detailed questions. What I'm saying is that you are already everything that you want to be. And all that changes is your commitment. All that changes is you waking up one morning and deciding that that's the story that you're going to tell people about your life. So this is the story of my life, or at least the last 30 odd years of it, and I hope it gives you some inspiration to think about the story that you tell. Thanks for listening.